Dear viewers, welcome back again to my channel. And our today's topic is uh, a criticism book written by I.A. Richard. The criticism book name is Principles of Literary Criticism, which was written in 1924. And today we will discuss about chapter 34, and that chapter 34 name is the two uses of language. In the chapter 34 of the book Principles of Literary Criticism, I.A. Richards, Ivor Armstrong Richard has delineated, or he has explained about the two functions of language, means how languages, or how language is used, means how, in what way language can be used. Those things are mentioned here. And Richard's works have founded the new movement in criticism, in literary criticism, which we call as new criticism. If we talk about new criticism, in new criticism, it notes that neither the writer nor the reader's perspective matters in criticism except the text. Means new criticism believes or considers that text is the only thing that is needed to be discussed or analyzed. Neither the reader's perspective nor the writer's perspective matters. For an example, a text is kept on the table and you have no idea about it, but it has been written on the book that the author is William Shakespeare, Christopher Marlowe, or Ben Jonson. Then you may make a preconceived idea that the book might be related to drama written in Elizabethan age, and it might be a notable literary work that worth reading. But in reality, you have not even opened as well as read a page of the book. So mere author's name has given you so much, countless, enormous thoughts and perceptions about the book. In addition, many people are talking about that book, and you will think that it might be a noteworthy creation. So you will try to read that book by just that things. Therefore, new criticism propagated that one should neither focus on writer nor the reader. Rather, it should focus solely on the text. Only book matters, or only text matters for them. I. Richard was the first critic who brought psychology in literary criticism. In an experiment done by I. Richards on his students, he has given a poem to analyze, but by removing the poet's name, and that poet name was Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. And when students have got that piece of poetry, then at that time student had no idea about the poet, so they didn't know who wrote it, so they had no clear idea about the background. So now their criticism or their analysis will be completely neutral, and it will be not biased, or it will not be affected by any other external factors. That's what new criticism actually wants to explore. uh, as we have already discussed, that new criticism does not consider writer and reader. So if the writer's name is given on that poem, or the poet name is given, then the students may make countless perceptions about the poem or the text, and it will ultimately fail to analyze independently. Therefore, IA Research has done that kind of experiment to prove the the need and importance of new criticism in literary criticism. According to I.A. Richards, in his book Principles of Literary Criticism, and in the chapter 34, the two uses of language, he has mentioned that there are two uses of language. Number one is scientific use, and number second is emotive use of language. Number one is, again, I am repeating it. Number one is scientific use of language, and second is emotive use of language. If we talk about scientific use of language, then when scientific language is used, there no emotion and feeling can be found in that particular text or writing. Rather, rational, logical, and relevant points are included and discussed in that particular scientific use of language. So, scientific use of language is found in law, medicine, constitution, scientific works, or or any other works that is related to administration, etc., etc., to gain knowledge and or pragmatic use or practical use. And if we talk about emotive use of language, then in emotive use of language, when emotions, feelings, and thoughts are immensely used or highly used in a specific text, then that will be called or termed as emotive use of language. For instance, in literature and in poetry or in a particular song, one cannot use scientific language. Therefore, one must use words there related to emotions, thoughts, and feelings to make it more comprehensible to the reader, or to make more enjoyable to the reader or to the audience or the listener or whatever the its counterpart. If we talk it broadly, then when language is used for scientific purposes, it requires complete facts, truths, and undistorted references, as well as absence of fictions. Besides, if it is used for emotive cause, then it can be true and false or both. I.A. Richards, in his chapter 34 of the principles of literary criticism, elucidates, or he has explained that the scientific uses of language or word is for the sake of references they promote. For example, using the word fire in a scientific text will ultimately signify the real object, but the same word may mean anger, disturbance, or heartbreak in poetry through emotive use of language. For example, my heart is on fire. This is a poetic line, and here an emotive use of language can be seen. Here, the poet is not saying that it has caught fire, rather, it is symbolizing uh, intense liking of something. For if we take another example of a poem written by Robert Burns, that poem name is A Red Red Rose. In this poem, we get a first line, and that line is, my love is like a red red rose. Here, my love is like a red red rose is an emotive use of language by the poet, where the poet is symbolically saying that his or her love is just like a red rose, and that has just emerged from the ground and is utterly new, fresh, and young. And this same line does not have any scientific significance. If we try to search it, or if we try to prove it in a scientific way, then this my love is like a red red rose, these things cannot be proven, or it cannot be found any kind of day-to-day use in our life. It's just an emotion that is written through emotive use of language. Furthermore, if we talk about scientific use of language, then science makes statements, but poetry makes pseudo statements. The scientific statement is justified and proven by testimony, and it can always be verified by a reference to its original. But in emotive use of language, it cannot be verified by a reference to its original. In poetry, the said lines are hard to prove, as we have already talked. It is just a statement in name, it does not exist practically. And it is rarely true also. Moreover, emotive use of language has the larger purpose of evoking an emotion or attitude of mind which the poet considers valuable, but in reality, it has no verbal equivalence. Therefore, the poet uses emotive language to evoke emotion indirectly or passively. Over and above, Richard considers the connotations of the word truth in criticism or in this chapter. In literary criticism, the common use is acceptability or probability. For example, as we all know about this book, Robinson Crusoe, written by maybe Daniel Defoe, is a true in the sense of the acceptability of things we are told. In the interest of the narrative, whether or not such a person existed in real life is not significant to the truth of the novel. Therefore, or therewithal, a happy ending to King Lear, written by William Shakespeare, or Don Quixote, would be false, as it would be unacceptable. In this sense, truth will be inequivalent to internal necessity or rightness, as I.A. Richard says in his chapter that the statements in poetry are there as a means to manipulation and expression of feelings and attitudes. Poetry communicates feelings and emotions, therefore, poetic truth is always different from scientific truth. It is, as a matter of fact, an emotional belief than intellectual belief. Consequently, poetry cannot be expected to provide us with reasoning and knowledge, nor is there any intellectual doctrine in poetry. Precisely, poetry only speaks to the impulses, not mind. Its speech, literal or figurative, logical or illogical, is faithful to its experience as long as it evokes a similar experience in the reader. A poem, therefore, as defined by I. Richard, is a class of experiences composed of all experiences occasioned by the words which are similar to the original experience of the poet. In the two uses of language, I.A. Richard mentioned about the two uses of language as follows. Okay, he has said the scientific use of language, not only must the references be correct for success, but the connections and relations of references to one another must be of the kind which we call logical. They must not get in one another's way and must be so organized as not to impede further reference. But for emotive purposes, logical arrangement is not necessary. It may be and often is an obstacle. For what matters is that the series of attitudes due to the references should have their own proper organization, their own emotional interconnection, and this often has no dependence upon the logical relations of such references as may be concerned in bringing the attitudes into being. That's it. That's all for this video, and I hope you have learned a little thing about this new criticism thing and the two uses of language as depicted by I.A. Richards in his new criticism work called The Principles of Literary Criticism. Thank you so much for watching the video.